Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. I am so excited to have our next guest on the show today. Remember, this is that kitchen table conversation where two friends are coming together to have a real life conversation together, ask each other questions to understand where the other person is coming from. And we're going to invite you, as that fly on the wall, to hear how we have this conversation so you guys can have that conversation in your own lives. I am super excited to introduce the Officer Tatum. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, all the things? I've been following you for a while, so I'm super stoked to have you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. Those who don't know me, I'm Officer Tatum on social. My name is Brandon Tatum, and I have a pretty significantly diverse background. I'd like to say I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. I was an All American football player coming out of high school. Went to the University of Arizona, where I got saved, and I was in the NFL draft 2010. I didn't get drafted, which was incredibly disappointing. But I think that God had a bigger plan for me, which I know now. At the time, I didn't. I was mad at God, but I know now that God had a bigger plan for me. I became a police officer in Tucson, where I played football and went to the university. I did graduate, get my degree, which was something I was very proud of. It was free, so I don't know how I would have not got my degree. My dad would always tell me, like, I don't care what happened in football, you better get your degree. It's
Mm-hmm.
free. And so I got my degree, went on to become a police officer in Tucson. I served there for about 6.5 years. One of my favorite accomplishments while being a police officer was that I was on the elite SWAT team, and I was also a public information officer. I was one of the spokespeople for Tucson Police Department. Started
Okay.
making content, started becoming conservative, or realizing I was conservative. I don't think I became conservative. I was a Christian, and
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of my beliefs were already conservative. But I kind of came to the realization that, well, wait a minute, I think I'm more a conservative Republican person than a Democrat. And after that, I started talking about politics. I went to a Trump rally, made a viral video, and I wouldn't intend to even make the video. I never did social media. I just so
Mm-hmm.
happened to put my thoughts on Facebook, and it went viral. Donald Trump shared it, and after that, I became a Trump supporter after going to that rally, and I just been doing social media ever since. I've been able to build a pretty incredible social media following and an incredible business. We got 20 employees here. We work, I don't know, about 4 companies that I own, and we work it all here at my headquarters. So that's pretty much a short and sweet of Brandon Tatum.
You
And
do
I guess
so
I could
much.
say I think the most important thing is that I'm married. My wife is an amazing woman.
I know. I was gonna say,
Um,
hey, she's a rock star. I've been following her for a
yeah,
little bit, and I'm like, dang, girl, like you guys are both powerhouses. Now
yeah,
you
yeah.
have
I
done
love,
a lot.
yeah, I love her.
And I think you've been in a lot of different areas, and now you do go to a bunch of campuses and you talk to young adults. But I find that some of the content that you share, like you have been a police officer. I know you have shared on social media how people have said because of the color of your skin, you can't do these things. When
Yeah.
you're having these conversations with all ages, all backgrounds, what is it? How do you listen to understand where someone's coming from versus just listening to respond to what they've said?
Well, it's pretty easy because I used to be just like them. I'm
Mm,
not any different than anybody else. At some point in time, I've had probably one of the thoughts that come across on campus. Like when people say they don't like police, I didn't like police at some point in my life. When people are, more leaning towards the Democrat Party, I used to be a Democrat. I voted for Barack Obama. So I'm
mm,
not going on campus, with no life experience.
right.
I've been there, done that. So I like to hear people out to hear what their perspective is so I can accurately respond instead of responding with
Right.
talking points and talking over people. There's a point in time where people don't act in good faith and then you have to, kind of be a little more forceful with them. But for the most part, it's like, yeah, I understand where you guys are coming from. And let me give you my perspective. You don't have to agree with me. And I tell people that all the time. You don't have to agree with me. I'm coming to campus to give you a different perspective. And these are my opinions. And some of the things that I say, I back up my opinions with facts, and therefore you could disagree with the facts, and that's okay. You don't even have to believe the facts. That's not my job to come and make you believe me. My job here is to have an open dialogue conversation and just give you perspective from a person who's been a professional in a lot of these areas where
Right.
people are having questions. Like I did go to university. I did study. I was a sociology major, a thematic minor. I know American Sign Language. Like I do a lot of stuff, and so, talking on college campuses, I'm not going into foreign territory. I went to the classes, I went to office hours,
Right.
all of those things that these young people experience. I've had that experience and had those same similar feelings. So, it's pretty simple when you're a genuine person to have a good conversation with people.
It does seem like that, like from an outside perspective. And I think that there's a lot of voices out there, and I always try to follow people that have various opinions to learn from them. In the foster care community, we have a lot of conflict with what we can and can't say because it usually is grounded in the trauma that we've experienced growing up from being in abusive environments or neglectful environments. So then we get to college and it's like, oh, there are very strong opinions on both sides. But whenever I've seen your content, it's like, okay, you're not yelling or screaming or shoving information down someone's throat, but you're like, I get that. And there's times that I was like, well, he is kind of yelling only because it's outside and you're trying to hear
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah.
person. But it's never been in a way that I'm like, ooh, I don't even want to follow you right now. It's like I actually am engaged in your content because those are the same questions I hear on campus all the time when I talk to foster youth of like, well, why should we listen to people to understand? Why should we have conversations with people who are different? Why is the other side not a bad guy? Like these are things that I think culturally right now, it's if you say like you saying, oh, I know who Trump is, or I'm a conservative Christian who's a Republican. Those are hot terms right now and bad in society sense, but it's like it's really not. It comes down to what you've shared before is like, is your belief of being a Christian and like the life that you've lived where you're like, I've seen all of this. I know what this is like. I have a perspective that's the same. And people, I think, especially within the younger generation right now, they want to be heard and they want to have a conversation. But when we get shut down as soon as we ask that question, it's just like, what's the point in dialogue anymore? And I think watching you on campus, I'm always like, dang, like it makes me excited to see so many people want that good dialogue of like, wait, what did you what did you mean when you said this? What do you mean when you said that? And that I think it's just really encouraging because, when we get in isolation, it's hard to hear that those conversations are actually happening. We just don't think that they are. So you had
Right.
also said you come with facts. So, I mean, since we were in high school, I mean, I was public school only in high school. Before that, I was homeschooled, not really homeschooled. But in high school, we were taught, like, well, if you want to hold on to a stance, you go out and find information to support that. What is a real fact and what is just grabbing information to say, here's something to support what I want it to say? How do you know the difference between the two?
Yeah, you have to look at both sides. If a person is coming to you and saying abortion is wrong, and a person is saying abortion is right, you have to look at the facts on both sides and see which way it balances.
Mm,
I would argue against people saying, or I would encourage them not to have an opinion and then verify an opinion. That's not how you should do it. You should look at all the evidence and form your opinion based on what's available as evidence. A lot of things, the reason I have convictions on a lot of things that I believe is because I've done the research and I've compared and contrasted both sides of it. When people say that police officers just killing black people for the sake of being black, I didn't have that experience being a police officer, but I do look at the facts and look at the statistical data and say, let that form your opinion. Okay, here's the statistical data points. Now you have to change your opinion. You can't just say,
mm,
I want to believe this to be true, and then therefore it's got to be true, and I'm going to find every article that agrees with me. And I think
yeah.
that's the wrong approach. And another thing is if you're going to spend your time having a conversation with somebody, you should have a conversation. You
Mm,
shouldn't be look I gotcha moments. That's not productive. And a lot of times on these campus events, or even when you're talking to somebody, it's like also it's just like presenting the gospel. Not everybody's going to believe you, but if you're genuine and you are presenting them with information that they probably have never heard before, many people will begin to say, I actually never thought of that. There's so many people
yeah.
on campus when they come in with an idea because of Turning Point or something that they think they heard Charlie say, and they come at us with this idea of what they think we're going to say, and it's like, no, that's not what I believe. So let me tell you what I
Right.
believe. And no, that's not true. Here's the statistical data point. Now you don't have to believe me. Same thing about
Right.
Jesus. When I would witness on campus when I was in college, people would be like, Jesus is a made up person. I'm like, well, you may not agree with Jesus, but Jesus is not a made up person. It's a historical person documented historically outside of the Bible. And
Yeah.
so now that you have that information, you may need to go and look into it further.
Yeah. And I'm going to shamelessly plug Free Spoke here. Free Spoke search engine. I know you know them too. I love them. Been using them for a while. I have a doctorate degree in psychology. And the crazy thing is, like, it was not until my PhD program that, like, towards the end, that they're like, hey, you have to learn to like actually how to research and not just regurgitate information that you read. And I was like, what is this? Like, we were never taught that. We were just taught to, you read this article and tell me what this article is about. But in a PhD program, they teach you how to actually take 5 to 7 articles that you read, and even if they're different, to synthesize, to summarize what you learn from all 5 to 7 very quickly and just say, okay, here are the facts based off statistics. And then you learn some of the statistics are wrong and manipulated or very small populations. And you're like, wow, I based my whole argument off of this one article that asked 5 or 10 people a question. That's not the entire group of people who might believe that same thing. So you're right, those conversations are super important because of that fact, that you can look at information, grab what you want, walk away, but not really dig into it. And I think that's what's so unique with the free spoke search engine, is that it actually shows you, like, okay, this article's on the right, this article's on the left, this one's more central, this one is only really referencing this, and this. And I was very surprised. I was like, dude, I wish I had this for like scholarly research because this is huge. This is a big deal to have just kind of this temperament of like, where does this lie? Because I'm not gonna lie, like, there are so many things out there that I'll see pop up and I'm like, man, that's stupid, why did so and so say that? And then I dig into it and I'm like, oh, that was out of context completely. And that happens with the Bible all of the time.
Oh yeah.
People read the content, they don't know the context, but they sit there and believe and push this narrative. And it's like, I think of always like when women in they're talking about, I think it's in Second Timothy, is they talk about women wearing head veils. But I was like, but, or not that one, it's in Corinthians too. But I'm like, but look above what they were talking about. Don't just look at this one verse over here and say wear a head veil. But it's like, well, did you see what they were talking about the entire time in the whole chapter and then the whole book? Because they're calling the church out for these behaviors, looking like everything around them. They're not making themselves different. And women were, the one is that don't women shouldn't talk to in the church, they should ask their husbands.
Yeah, yeah, they should be quiet. They should be silent in the church,
They
and if
should
they
be
have
silent.
questions,
I'm
ask their
like,
husband at home.
but look up above where it says they were coming to church and everyone was being disruptive, no one was learning, they were trying to come in to make themselves look like they had everything, like they're like, oh, I have more questions than you kind of situation when you look at the whole picture. And you sit back and you're like, well, where was this? Where was the context behind the content? And that's what you learn when you step outside of everything you've ever known. But that's hard to do, and it's convicting sometimes and very exhausting. So when you are searching when on something on a particular topic, how much time do you spend? Because you said research. Some people's research is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, some's it's hours. How long will you dig into something before you consider it real research?
It depends on the topic, because at some point you have to believe certain research documents. Like if it comes from the FBI and it seems fairly reasonably presentable, then if in good faith, I'll believe that document unless I find other things that will suggest that it's faulty, right?
Mm,
And that's kind of how I do it. Like some things are pretty common sense,
mm-hmm.
and they're pretty straightforward. So you don't need to go and do an exhaustive research document. And the thing is that not everything that you read or that you think is true now, you'll think is true later, because there could be new developments, new information, new things that you find. So I think when a person make a declarative statement, they have to be open to saying that, I could possibly be wrong about this. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you have information that will debunk the things that I have researched, then let me see them. Therefore, I can form a better opinion if I don't already have the information. But some
Yeah.
stuff, like when I talk about the Bible and faith and stuff, it's a real deep dive. I mean, years of research, because
Mm,
it's a nuance, right? Wasn't the Bible is very complicated, and people try to make it to be a simple document inspired by God and all that. But
mm-hmm.
that's a very simplistic approach, because Jesus didn't speak Greek, and
Oh.
so therefore,
What?
you have, and Jesus didn't say anything. Jesus didn't actually say anything that's in the Bible technically, right? Somebody's writing
Oh
what he
yeah,
said
yeah.
to them.
I
So
was like,
I mean,
what are you
let me
saying,
let me let me
Brandon?
now let me make sure that I'm clear about this. So people get all weird.
Yeah, they
Jesus
do.
didn't write anything in the Bible, meaning that
It
it wasn't
didn't.
him saying,
Yeah.
"I said this." This was
Right.
another person that said what Jesus said to him in a language that Jesus didn't speak. So it becomes very complicated. I don't think that dynamic can make the Bible untrue. You can still read the Bible and
Right.
get a lot of stuff out of it. But when you start to get to context, when you start to go into say, well, what did the people believe at the time that this was written? Who
Yeah.
wrote the Bible? What was their theology when they wrote the Bible? How was Matthew different than John, different than Mark? When did they write this
Mm.
stuff? When was the documents presented? You know,
Right.
Paul never learned directly from Jesus Christ, but he, got
Right.
a vision from Jesus Christ and was chosen by Christ. Those are
Mm.
different dynamics. So this is why Peter would probably say things that may sound like they disagree or maybe in contradiction of Paul. And understanding
Mm.
these things in the totality of circumstances, how you get to the nitty gritty. And
Right.
like I say, understanding the different translations of the Bible, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
If you really want to go deep, it's invaluable for you to go deep. Hebrew words. Hebrew and
Yes.
English is like Spanish and English, but even more drastic. That means that every Hebrew word cannot be translated into English properly. So,
Right.
there's a lot of nuance there that if you want to go deeper, you can go deeper into it, which takes years of study,
Yes.
which takes you listening to scholars on both sides of an argument biblically. And I tell you what, I become stronger in my faith when I actually listen to people who disagree with my faith. When I actually
Mm.
listen to the Muslim argument against Christianity is where I learn the most, because
Yeah.
therefore I have to then challenge it. Right? I'm like, okay, this is what a person, a theologian or somebody who's an apologist for the Islamic faith with 2 billion people follow it. This is what this person is saying. Now I gotta go look this up. And then many
Right.
times I look it up and it confirms my beliefs. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is exactly why I believe it. Therefore, my beliefs are stronger than they were.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm surface level and somebody posed something to me that I never thought about before, a lot of people begin to leave the faith or they begin to doubt
Mhm.
because they never looked it up or thought about it at all. And so that's why it's important with everything that you do in life is that there's always two sides to something. And this was really driven home to me when I was a cop, because I when I was a young cop, I'll never forget this scenario where this lady called the police, said my boyfriend beat me up and all these things. And I remember driving to the call and I'm like, I
Really
cannot stand
violent.
men that put their hands on women like this. And when I get to the scene, I'm gonna find this guy and he better not resist arrest because I'm gonna put a whooping on him for beating this girl up. We get there, she got knots on her head and everything. And so the fury that I felt about the scenario was realized because I heard her side of the story. Then once we found him, we realized there's another side of the story. He
Mm.
actually was the victim of this situation because he was asleep and she had looked through his phone and she found that he was cheating or something. And she went in the room while he was sleeping and started beating him up. And so he can't see. He's thinking it's an intruder or something. So he's blindly swinging and he hit her a couple times when he's swinging in the dark. And after interviewing both of them, she admits that that's what she did and admits that he didn't know it was her. And so she ended up going to jail. But what it made me realize is that, wait a minute, you can't go off the first thing that you hear,
Yeah.
because although I believe that that was a shutting case, she had knots on her head. Once I was able to interview everybody involved, I realized, whoa, this was incredibly different than what I thought it was. And actually, somebody got arrested in this case that we thought originally was the victim. And nobody
Right.
could tell you anything different unless you actually interview both sides. And so, as a
Yeah.
cop, that really made me realize when I go to a scene, you can never just believe the first thing you hear. You need to get
Yeah.
all of the information and let the information tell you the story about what happened.
It's funny because as not funny, it's not funny. This is a sad story. But as you're talking about the situation, my brain stopped at like, well, he cheated. But then it's like, but that didn't give her a right to physically assault him. And then when he's, asleep, mind you, yeah, if someone's hitting me and I'm woken up to someone hitting me, I'm going to start hopefully swinging. But it's the situation should not have led to that. But if you listen to the whole story, it's like, okay, there was clear indication of something happening beforehand that wasn't great, should not have been handled though in the way that it was. The outcome should have not happened. But my brain like wanted to stop like, well, he was cheating. But it's like, but that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
matter.
And
What? Yeah.
right, because when we go to these calls, we're looking at the law. So
Right.
there's nothing in the law against cheating on people. It's wrong, but if your
Right.
boyfriend cheat on you, just leave him. That'd
Right.
be an appropriate response. When you go to assault him while he's asleep, then now you have violated a law. And it
Yeah.
goes beyond what I feel is right. Right. I think it's
Right.
terrible for people to cheat on people. And if your girlfriend slap you because you cheated on her, personally, that's what you get. But
Right.
according to the law, we have to stick very strictly to the law. And this is the same thing that we have to do in our debates when it comes to facts. It's like, yeah, your feelings may be a certain way. You may not believe that it should be this way. You may not feel this is true. Anecdotally, it may not be something that you is realized in your life, but we got to stick to the facts. And the
Mhm.
facts say X. And if we're arguing about a fact, then we need to stick to the facts. And so there's a time and a place for
Yeah.
obviously emotional, interjection. But if we're going to argue about a fact, then we need to stick to the facts.
I think that kind of brings me to the last question, because it's your I want to talk about like how do you handle when people disagree and agree with you, because there is a lot of conversation that are based off of emotion, and then we say, well, I can't be around you, I can't be associated with you because you believe something different than I do, and you're not not it's not catering, but you're not hearing my emotion. How do you handle those conflicts when someone agrees with you or disagrees with you? What does that conversation look like differently? I think everyone expects us to have every conversation publicly, but there is such a power of having a sit down with someone and saying like, "Hey, I know you disagree with me. What does that conflict look like with you? How do you handle when someone disagrees with you personally or then like publicly?"
Well, you can't give attention to every single disagreement, right? If it's a person you don't know and they don't know you and you guys are disagreeing, unless you want to build a relationship with that person, there's no need to really get offended by it. You just don't deal with people like that if you're not vested into a relationship. For people that you have a relationship with, it's worth you having a conversation and agreeing to disagree. Now, even in that, both sides have to be reasonable, right? If I'm talking to a person and we disagree about Donald Trump, if a person is reasonably saying, hey, this is why I disagree with Donald Trump, this is my opinion. I go, this is the reason why I like Donald Trump. This is my opinion. We can agree to disagree and still be friends. Versus a person who's saying that you're evil, you're a devil, and you're going to hell because Trump is a racist and he's a pedophile or something like that. And you're like, well, you're not operating in good faith and you're not operating in facts. So you're name calling and you know what I'm saying? So you're not really being a good friend and you're not open minded to anything. So maybe, just maybe, we need to not be, you know, friends with each other if you're not going to actually be my friend. And I'll give you an
Right.
example. One of my best friends, me and him been friends since we both were 18 years old.
Mhm.
And we disagreed on the Black Lives Matter thing, the police thing, but we still remain friends because he has his opinion, I have my opinion. We still love each other. And eventually, to be quite honest, after COVID, he ended up realizing that I was right, and we're still
Right.
friends to this day. And because he disagreed with me and he voted for a Democrat, don't make a difference to me. My dad is the same way. My dad agrees with me on like 98% of things, but he voted for Kamala Harris. Does that mean I'm not going to be around my dad? It's like things that get a little testy, we just don't talk about. We just leave it alone. If super passionate about something, I'm super passionate about something. If we're not going to agree with it and we're not going to have any effective communication about it, we just won't talk about it. So I think that people got to realize you don't have to lend your explanation to every single person that disagrees with you. Some people need to be
Yeah.
put in categories. People on social media that say, Brandon, I don't follow you no more because you're a fraud. It's like that person don't count to me. It's like, well, fine, you don't have to follow me. You don't know me. I don't know you. I don't owe you anything.
Right.
But when it comes to people that, like me and my wife, originally we kind of disagreed on the Israel Gaza thing for a while,
Yeah.
and we would
Yeah.
have heated debates every day, in love, but we would debate our sides every day, and then eventually we both came to an agreement that we agree now. And
Can
throw
you
your
talk
wife
a
away.
little
I
bit
mean,
about that situation of just like how, because I remember following hearing her on the stories about it. Like what was it that was the conflict, and like why was it a conflict? Because I think
yeah,
people
because
can learn from this
and I
one.
yeah,
Like
because
that's
I
fine.
went to Israel. So I had a different perspective, like being there, seeing how Israelis were, seeing how Arabs were, seeing the conflict between the West Bank and Israel proper and all that. I saw it with my own eyes, and I did an entire tour. We had a tour guide, and we did mostly the Christian sites. So I had somewhat of a loyalty to Israel because I fell in love with Israel. So I was slightly biased towards Israel to a certain degree, and also I believe the Bible is very clear about how Christians should perceive Israeli or Jewish people and the promises and all of the stuff. And that's where I was coming from in the argument. I think my wife was leaning more towards the killing and the IDF is, believing some of the stuff that was on the internet about them just indiscriminately killing people, bombing, and some of the myths I think my wife was believing. And one of our really good friends was kind of leading that deception, in my personal opinion, and my wife was believing it. But my wife is smart, so she had that perspective. She understood that I possibly could have been biased, and as we continue to bring up stuff, articles that we both were reading, it started to lean more towards her believing some of the things that I'm saying more because the facts was on my side more so than the things that she had been reading. And so initially, she was, kind of, I guess, believing some of the naysayers when it come to Israel running the country and different things like that. And after a while, she realized that, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of holes in the arguments that people are making on that other side. And then it wasn't really until after I interviewed Benjamin at Yahoo and she saw the vitriolic behavior and the insanity of how people came out against me related to just an interview, which I asked him all the questions that everybody wanted me to ask him. Right. And it was up to them to determine his responses, not me, and so that kind of got my wife more like, I'm starting to see what you're saying, Brandon,
And it's wild because so I've interviewed people very like I'm interviewing you and people are going to come at me and be like, wow, Janisha, how dare you interview Brandon? He's so far right. And I've always been in the middle just because it's like I want to see all the sides and I don't want to get in like I mean when I say I'm not like I'm conservative Christian, but there is that far right where I'm like, "Oh, but I'm not like that far." And then I see the left and I'm like, I used to be very liberal in high school because of pain
yeah,
that I had endured and like I was told that because of the trauma I went through that I should get everything for free and that people owed me. But then it was kind of like, okay, that mindset didn't work for me. It didn't help me get off my butt at 18 while I'm homeless, living in my car, being like, okay, no one's coming to my rescue and I keep not getting help. So I need to do something different. And so I started to, like you said, like dig into this, but this conflict between like someone on the internet is so different than someone that you are married to, and it is harder to have that conflict in your own home. So that's why I wanted you to share a little bit more about that because I think like there's proximity. I know you've shared about that. Like sometimes, like you said, people on the internet, I don't even know, you probably wouldn't recognize you down the street. But when it's someone you love, your father, your wife, it's like, well, we have to agree. We have to agree fully on this. This is where I think some
yeah,
of the bad mentality comes in our society.
yeah,
We
because people got
don't.
to realize, yeah,
Yeah, go
people
ahead.
got to realize that you got to prioritize things.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is my wife. I'm never going to leave
Yeah.
my wife. Like,
Right.
so if we disagree, we just need to have a conversation about where our boundaries are on a disagreement. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
divorce each other because we disagree on certain things. If that was the case, we would have never got married. But a
Mm-hmm.
marriage is a commitment to life, and that's it. There's no divorce. Divorce don't count. Divorce is not an option.
Yeah.
And the same thing with your family. My dad is never going to stop being my father, and my
Mm-hmm.
mother's going to not be my mother. And people who are my deep friends, the friendship runs deeper than political opinions because those things do change over time. And so if you're going to
Yeah.
throw the baby out with the bathwater because you don't agree in a dispensation of time, I mean, that's ignorant. Like
Yeah.
there's a good friend of mine, and we disagree to no end on Israel and other things, but she's still my friend.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to get on the internet and bash her. We text
Yeah.
on the
No,
phone.
no.
I
Yeah.
tell her
I
how
don't
I
think you
feel on the
should.
phone.
Yeah, you never should. And I
No,
find it. Go
because
ahead.
friendship is deeper than online politics.
Yeah.
When somebody when you are like family with somebody, that means that outside of this political stuff, I know that I got a person that I could trust.
Yeah.
Our families are like families together. Our kids play together. Like all of that stuff is more than a political disagreement. And
Right.
especially if you're not being a weirdo to me and treat me and my family any kind of way,
Right.
then we can get over our differences. And like for instance, somebody was telling me that how can you be friends with this person? How can you do this? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, because to be honest, if you think that I'm right and my friend is wrong, then the closest person to communicate the truth to my friend would be me being the person's friend. It's not me
Yeah.
saying I can't be friends with you anymore. And who else is going to talk to the person who they trust about the things that we believe are different, or
Yeah.
or that this friend is incorrect about? So
Yeah.
it's like you don't turn your back on your true friends, because at some point
No.
we're gonna be old. Nobody gonna be talking about Israel. Nobody gonna be talking about Trump. Nobody's gonna be. The internet may be a whole nother thing. And when you're old, things will probably be different. So you don't
Yeah.
throw your friends away over a temporary disagreement.
I think of MySpace when you say that. Like when everyone's like, MySpace is forever, and then it just like went away and
Yeah,
you can't
yeah,
find it anymore. But it's true. And I want someone to hear this too, because I think especially I have come from a hard past where it is like I had to cut my parents off, not because of a political difference, not because of a difference of opinion, but because they were physically and emotionally and mentally unsafe. That's not what you're talking about. You're not like,
right.
oh, Denisha, be friends with people who are, that's not what you're saying. You're like, look, we have a difference of opinion that might actually change. But being close to your friend and saying, hey, I'm willing to like put this aside for now to where we can talk about it if you want to talk about it, but with boundaries and with love for us both to meet each other at the table to say, like, maybe we're both wrong on this. And that's okay. It's okay to have that difference. But it is a friend when they come in love to correct you, to say, hey, that's not true. Like, here's some of the stuff I know with whatever your background is, or maybe where you're at emotionally, mentally right now, that's where you're just like, I need to believe this. That happens. But I'm going to be a friend to you to say, like, I know that this is hard to hear, but I love you enough, versus being like, well, we don't align 100%. See you later. Bye. That kind of friendship is really
Yeah.
hard to even be
And
in. So how,
I've had to cut friends off.
yeah,
There were friends. I had to cut them off because it wasn't that scenario where it's in love. It's betrayal. I had a person that was my friend for a very long time, and I thought that me and him were really good friends, and then I come to find out that he's talking about me behind my back, and he's celebrating people who actually hate my guts and lied on my wife and stuff. And it's like, well, man, then this is not a real friendship, dude. If you feel this way about me, or you're celebrating people who hate me, then
right.
there's really no synergy between you and I, and we don't need to be friends. You can
Right.
exist in your world, I exist in my world, and friends are reserved for people that got my back and people who I can trust to watch my kids and different things like that. Outside of that, you're just a person on the internet that we may go back and forth on political topics, but in my inner circle, people that I need to be safe around, that I can trust, you're not one of those people, so you don't need to be my friends. And I'll tell you this,
Yeah.
cutting family members off isn't a bad thing either. They still are your
Right.
family, but you don't have to be around people who are toxic.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I think people, it's relationships too. A lot of people hold on to relationships because they think that their relationships validate who they are in life. It's like, no, if a person is toxic, there's a difference between a person disagreeing with you and being toxic. And
Yeah.
like, for instance, I couldn't have a friend that's cheating on his wife.
No,
Hey,
right.
dude, if you're willing to cheat on a woman that you committed to for the rest of your life, you definitely will turn your back on me. You and I really can't be cool like that. If you're a
Yeah.
person that wants to go out and get drunk on a weekend and do dangerous stuff that can compromise me and my relationship with my wife, then hey, we can't be friends. It's fine. I don't hate you, but I need to prioritize the health and wellness of my life and what God has called me to do. And if you're interfering with that, I don't have to hate you, but we just can't kick it like that.
Well, and it's almost out of love, because it's like you're going to have that, and I think this is what people miss, is they cut people off and they're like, we're not going to have that conversation. We're not going to talk about it. Nobody mentioned the person's name. It's the name we don't speak. Instead of being like, what I feel like you're saying is, what you would do is you'd go to them and say, hey, this is not okay behavior. Okay, you're still engaging in it. Then I cannot be your friend. We're this is the end of our friendship. I love you. I'm always here for you. But if you're in this life, in that lifestyle, I can't be engaged with you. And I think that's the conversation that people fail to have a lot. It is more of like, well, I'll just kind of slowly push them out because their political beliefs are really bad, but they're still a really good person. And I'm like, well, you don't
Yeah.
like who he voted for, she voted for. And it's like, but are they a good person? Like, what did they vote for? Was it the person that they voted for, or the policy that they felt was good or enough to help in this time frame? But that
Yeah.
it's
And
ironic.
people
It's just a lot.
and people got to stop being so emotionally driven by decisions that they make when it comes to friendships. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people want to cut people off and block you and stuff. It's like, no, communicate with the person that
Yeah.
allegedly is your friend, unless they do something violent or something crazy, and then you're like, okay,
We
there's
don't
no
like you.
talking. Your
Yeah.
violence spoke loud enough. I want nothing to do with you. But if it's somebody, communicate with the person and say, hey man, this is really, I feel this way about the friendship. I don't feel that the friendship is going the way that it should. And another
Mhm.
person may come back and give you something to think about and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you felt like that. I could change this that I'm doing if it's hurting your feelings. You go, well,
Right.
you know what? I could change the way I'm looking at the way you're doing this. And you have a communicate first, because when people do cold turkey stuff, it never lasts. There's resentment,
Yeah.
there's bitterness,
Yeah.
then there's this influx to try to. I want to come back to being your friend, but you already burnt the bridge because you just cut this person off and blocked them.
Yeah.
People need to be a little more. Sometimes you got to sleep on it. Sometimes you need to pray about it. Sometimes you got to think
Oof.
it through and not
The
make an
Bible said
emotional knee jerk reaction.
the Bible told, what was it, Jeremiah? Go take a nap and get some food.
Yeah,
Someone in the Bible
yeah,
was told to go take a nap and eat. And I'm like, that is
yeah.
the
That's
scripture for me.
hey, if
But
it's, if it's not in the Bible, it should be in the Bible, because a lot of us get
it is.
hangry and we don't
It's
think about stuff, and we do stuff that we probably shouldn't do in the moment.
It actually is, and I think it is Jeremiah, and he was like basically depressed, and God was like, "Go take a nap and go get food." I was like,
Yeah.
I will make sure the right verse is linked down below if it's not Jeremiah, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was. But it's like I was recently in a conflict with someone, and it was really hard because the dynamic, I've already addressed it before, and what personally have a hard time with is when someone's like, well, you should do this and you should do that, and I'm like, oh, I've already done those things, and this is what I see, and it's like, well, you're wrong and I might be wrong, but it's like, no, okay, now you're just like, the whole conversation is where you're talking down to me. I have a hard time when people do that. How would I, like, what would I do in that situation if I don't want to have conflict? I have a hard time in conflict. What is the best way to work through that emotionally to be able to address it with people once it comes up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It just depends on the relationship with the person, right? And we always need to be growing in our availability to be accessible to other people in a reasonable way, like God will call us to be, right? You don't want to be so sensitive that anybody say anything to you that now you flashing out on them and you don't want to be friends with them, and you get emotionally distraught and you need 2 or 3 days down and all this stuff. So you want to work through the process of saying, I need to have the gentleness and peace and patience that God has called me to have. And so I
Right.
can give a proper response to certain people. But this is the way I live my life. I don't do drama. If you are making me feel uncomfortable, I don't want to be around you, because the only energy that I want to be around is people that are going in the same direction as me. I want excitement.
Yeah.
I want people that and not just yes people, right? Because I
Yeah.
have enough wisdom and self reflection to know when I'm messing up and doing anything wrong. But I want people to be on my side as far as where God is calling me to be. I don't really need somebody that's negative Nancy all the time, trying to tell me I'm wrong. Like, we can have a conversation about it in good faith, but I don't want a person nagging me every day, because a lot of
Yeah.
times when people are doing that, they're not doing it in good faith and coming from a good place.
Right.
If you're around people and they make you feel down, and you like, they call you on the phone and you like get a pit in your stomach, and you're just like, oh, not again.
You say
Those are
their name, you're
God
like,
is
oh.
right.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
your what God is putting you as discernment is talking to you and saying, this person is not good for where I'm taking you in life. That's why you feel a burden and
Mm,
you feel heaviness dealing with this person. And it don't have mean you have to cut them off and delete them from the Facebook page or whatever the case may be.
right.
But you need to communicate, hey, I'm going in a different direction,
Right.
because the more energy you spend in conflict and depression and sadness and reverting back to old feelings and emotions, the less
Yeah.
time you have to be moving forward in God's purpose and promise for your life. So I only hang around intimately. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying there's people that I don't deal with, that I deal with, in passing, but
Right.
intimately, people that I communicate with on a day-to-day basis, people that I go and travel with, people that I go to dinner with, are only people that we all are together in moving up in Christ, right? We're all
Yeah.
excited about what God is doing in our lives. We all are, past that trauma mark where we're not trauma dumping on everybody during the dinner. Like, we're talking about what God is doing moving forward. We're talking about business
Yeah.
plans. We're talking about how good God is, and we're sharpening iron, and we're talking about scripture, and those things are what people should consume themselves around for your own consciousness, or your
Yeah.
own emotional safety.
What you're not, and I know someone who's going to be like, "Oh, Brandon said this." What you're not saying is when someone you're one of your people are going through a hard time, you're not like, "Oh, sorry, you're dragging the mood down." What you're saying is like
No, no.
someone who's literally like, "Brandon, are you sure you heard God tell you to go that direction? Are you sure that that's how
Yeah,
God said this or that to you? Are you sure that that's the right person to sit with? Are you?" And it's just like, why are you always so negative? Like, that's the kind of
yeah.
person you're talking about.
Right.
It's the
It's
person that
not the
is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not the person that's always down, right?
Right,
At times
right, right,
we have our moments, and that's where your friends are there for you and say, "Hey, man, get up from there. God is good. Come to dinner. Let's
right,
talk. You're gonna make it past this." In a time of grief, they're gonna pray for you.
right.
They'll pray for you. They'll be there for you. Hey, I'm here if you need somebody to call. Not a person that every time you talk to them, they just loom and gloom. Oh man, God is not. The world is against, the devil is trying me. If the devil trying you all day long and you're not overcoming none of your obstacles, at some point, I can't sit here and waddle with you. We got to grow together. There's a little bit of downtime. We could talk through it. Let's pray about it. Let's not complain about it
Mm-hmm.
all day. Let's pray about it. Like, I'm talking about
Yeah.
people that and the people that I'm talking about, or the environments that I'm talking about, everybody that's listening to this know what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know when it's that person
That's why
that's
I started
just
laughing because I was like, "Yup."
that's just dragging you down versus the person that's having a hard moment, or a person that's
Yeah.
going through a season and they're not letting it consume them, because you cannot use all of your emotional bandwidth to
Yeah.
just be dealing with a person day in and day out. That's not the way God intended. Like, God is giving you the wisdom and is giving you the strength to lift your brother up, not go down with him and cry and be sad and then go back to your life and go back down to cry and be sad. It's like, no, no.
Right.
I have an opportunity to pull you up
Yeah.
to where I'm at. I have the opportunity to pray you out of what you're feeling like. I have the
Yeah.
opportunity to love you through your trauma till we get to this
Mm-hmm.
point, not to come down and waddle with you. And
Yeah.
that's not something that you do cold turkey with a friend off a whim. You
No.
get what I'm saying? It's just that the feeling with that person that's just like,
Yeah.
this person is just dragging me, versus me feeling like I'm speaking life to them and we're moving forward.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I share my story on social media, but I always try to do it with the perspective of like the situation so people know what to look for when it comes to things like foster care, CPS, abuse, things like that, but also highlighting like what God has done in my life to make my life what it is today. And me and my little sister got together over Christmas and we had talked to someone that we had known, and she's like, "Man, it's like so and so's living 10, 15 years ago and we've like moved on." And like it was like, "Dude, I'm not even, that's like, I thought I was the only one." And we did bring this to the person in love and just say like, "Hey, we love you enough to tell you this," but it's like it drags us all down when you're like, "Well, this happened to me," and you're like, as if it was yesterday. And you're like, "Dude, that
Yeah.
was 15 years ago." Like, we were all there. We all saw it. We're just trying to have a beach day today. And she's like,
Hey,
"Dude, it brings me down, man." And I'm like, it might be time to not invite that person if that's, have that conversation of like, "I love you enough to let you know that this really brought me down. And I understand that that was really hard 15 years ago, but what are you doing about it today?" Nothing but saying, "This happened to me and that's why I can't be successful." As we both have come from that same environment, both me and my sister are just like, you make your life what it is. Like, she's in the army, she's like currently at a special training right now doing all this crazy stuff, and like moved on up, and she's 26. She's super successful. And it is that thing where she just kind of comes home sometimes and she's like, "Man, they're not doing nothing." And I'm like, "I know, just keep walking." And that's the
yeah.
environment that's super hard to like, we should be able to have a day where we don't talk about that thing from 15 years ago. Now it's different when you lose a spouse. Like I do think of your friend Erica Kirk, which is heartbreaking, and you're not pulling a Job friend moment on her and being like, it's been 7 days. You're like,
Yeah.
that's going to be a lifelong pain, but we're here through that grievance, we're here through that
Right.
pain, and we're going to try to also help you have good days because it's so heavy. She
And,
doesn't
and look
need
at
that reminder.
right, and look at how she's responding.
Yeah,
These are the type of,
yeah,
because she actually have faith in God, so she's able to
absolutely.
pull herself up and do the things that she need to do, and
Yeah,
she is believing in God, and we're just helping. The thing is that what happens is you're here and here, and we're all moving up together. And when it feels heavy, we lift you up. Come on,
mm,
sis, you got
yeah.
this. We got you. We're going to
You're
support you
not
through
alone
this.
in this.
Hey, let's pray for you. Here's a scripture that can empower you. And somebody that's really moving in God, they don't go off the cliff. They
Yeah.
continue to move, and we just work like this. And and I want people to understand that is that it's one of the hardest things to do, but sometimes you got to let baggage go. Some people have
Mm,
become baggage in your life. It's impossible for you to get flight when you got a whole bunch of weights
right.
on you.
Yeah.
God is trying to
Yeah.
take you to another level, and that person don't want to go. And it's
And that's what,
okay.
yeah. Yeah.
It's not
They
your fault. It's not your dealing. Whenever Moses parted the Red Sea, hey, look, if you don't want to go through the safety and you want to stay back here, then hey, I love you, but we moving on. We're moving forward. And it's not. I think
right.
a lot of times people feel guilt, almost like survivor's guilt. They
Yes.
feel guilt. They're like, dang, I made it out,
And I
and this
didn't.
person is still struggling in that. And it's like, look, you're not God. That person needs to deal with God, and God is going to deliver them at their own timing.
Because
You're
that's what
not
the work
God.
is. It's there's the physical pain that we go through, there's the abuse or the trauma or the hardship in life that we go through, but really what's at work in that, where someone's like, I can't let this hurt go, it is between them and God, and it's a spiritual thing where it's like I have to learn to heal from that on a spiritual sense, and that is only between them and God. And you can't carry some, I forget who said it, but it was just like, it was a pastor and he was talking about it, and he just like, you can't force someone to sit with God. And I was like, oh yeah, no, you can't. But what you can do is encourage them to. And so as your friend is hurting, you guys, like, I love that where you're like, we're lifting her up, and I there's somebody else who recently just said it, but she had said like, your friends are the ones that are going to carry you in times of loss, and or they're going to put you down. So choose your friends wisely and choose your circle carefully. And I was like, ooh. And it's hard to lose. It's hard to lose people, but it is better to sit in an empty room being able to say, you know what, that was hard and I made it through, than sit in a room being lonely and people putting you down and you're still stuck where you were 10, 15 years ago. And
Yeah,
that
it's a
for
lot.
me has been huge.
Pruning and
It's so hard.
refining is something that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. I just think about the gardeners that come out to the yard and they got to cut off all that crap so that the
Mm,
so that the trees can begin to blossom more. You kind
yeah.
of got to shave back all that garbage and all that waste so you can blossom. And I think that people have to realize that you cannot be afraid to do that in your life,
Yeah.
because you're the sum. And people say this all the time. It sounds cliche, but you're the sum of the five people you hang around. And
Oh,
if you hanging
100%.
around, you being the one that believe in God and everybody else don't believe in God, you become the sum of that.
Yeah.
Versus you hanging around or being in partnership with people who are stronger in faith than you are, who are challenging you to do better, who are not wasting their time waddling in their fears and waddling in what happened to them years
Right.
ago, but they're
Mhm.
telling you, hey, let's start a nonprofit and do something about it.
Yeah.
When you're around people that are active, it keeps you from being inactive. It keeps you from being
Yeah. Absolutely.
in depression.
Yeah.
You're like, no, these people are starting nonprofits. No, 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 let's go out and raise money. No, 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 they invited me to an event. They invited me to this, and now I can meet this person and meet this person. And this
Right.
is the life that you want. You don't want to be sitting there feeling like, man, I'm ready to grow, and like my friends aren't really there, and you find yourself
Yeah.
stooping down to their level instead of you guys all lifting yourselves up. So
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing to do. Man, it's easy to sit here and talk about it, but
It's
in
hard.
reality,
It's hard.
you got people in your life that you got to cut off. You got people got relationships right now that they are
Yeah.
involved in, and every night they go to bed, and they may be going to bed next to this person. Every night they go to bed, and God is putting on their heart that this ain't what I called you to do. yeah, this person is abusive. You cannot keep looking past a person abusing you psychologically. No, this is narcissism. The person is not being right by you, and you know it in your heart. You go to sleep on the side of the bed every night, wishing that some star fall out of the sky and can help you dissolve this relationship with this person. People
Right.
got to come to a point and say, enough is enough. Look, you're
Mm-hmm.
not the person for me. I love you. I wish the best for you, but I cannot live in a situation where I'm not flourishing. And let me give you an
Yeah.
example. When people finally prune that off, when they finally cut that relationship, they begin to grow exponentially. And this is why the people who are to that point need to always go back and speak life to people that are in that same position.
Right.
Don't get rid of your boyfriend or whatever the case may be, or get rid of a friend, and now you free and you forget to turn around and teach other people and give life to other people and say, hey, I went through this. You can do it. Let me help
Yeah.
you. Let me speak life to you for those who you don't have direct communication with. Don't ever be the person that when God deliver you, you forget to turn around and help other people who may need to hear your voice.
It's wild because I used to probably like 2 years ago I went through like some heavy therapy, like just to like really talk through some stuff because I was so bitter and just angry at people, and I was like, I don't want to deal with people, I don't want to be around people, like I'm just done. I'm just so like I'd poured out for so long but wasn't ever getting poured into, but it led to me being like holding grudges against people that did no wrong. And so I was like, I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't like it. This is not beneficial. Like I've done all this stuff really cool in my life and have been successful, but emotionally I feel like I'm just stuck at 15 years old. So I dug into, Bible, church, and like just talking with my husband and going to therapy on it and started really working through. And it wasn't necessarily digging toward the trauma that I experienced as a child, but more of a like as an adult, and just like bitterness that I let my heart get hardened against people because I started to well, you're not for me, you're against me, and like just cut people out like crazy. And it took one person just to be like, hey, I love you enough to tell you you have to let that go in your heart,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be able to move forward if you're just going to be bitter at everybody else. And it took a long time. Like I saw the post with my memories on Facebook were like, hey girl, like remember when you posted this? And I was like, dang, like that was a little dark. And I sat back though and I was like, wow, it is so cool to see that growth in myself, but now I want it for other people. And that I never really, I was, I love reaching back into the fire of foster youth and like pulling them out and being like, hey, come this way. Don't live in that victim mentality, but come this way. But there is also a bitterness that could happen with us where we look at other people and we're like, that's your problem. Instead of just being like, look, I know this is hard. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to suck. But I promise you, 2, 3, 4 years from now, you're going to see this growth. And so recently, this week, I finished reading Job, and one of the things I noticed is like, God, everyone knows Job lost everything. God gave him back everything afterwards. But it hit me that that was not right away. Like that took years, decades to get back. And I think that's what's so wild is sometimes in that growth, it takes time, but it also like he didn't let his heart get bitter. He still loved people around him. And that was kind of where I sat back. I was like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. It's that full circle. Is like we find healing, and then we're like, guys, it's this way. It's towards Jesus, because you can get all the success in the world and still be miserable, depressed, anxious, and bitter at the world. But
Yeah, and
Jesus really is the answer.
yeah, and if you get to the point in your faith where you understand that God is in control of everything,
Yeah.
and that it's nothing that's going to happen to you in your life that God don't know. He's like caught off
Mm-hmm.
guard.
Mm-hmm.
That don't happen. So
Right.
in the valley or at the mountaintop, God is still in control. So when you are in the valley, what should you be doing? You should be looking at this situation and saying, okay, God, what are you showing me? What are you teaching me? Let me enjoy the process because I know you got my back. Just like if when you have kids, like, my two sons, it's like, yeah, I'm teaching you how to get through some of the challenges that you are going through, but
Right.
but I'm telling you because I already went through it and I know how to get out of it. And the process that you're going through is learning a lesson. You're going to come out of it. I'm not going to let you fail. I'm
Yeah.
not going to let you live in. I'm going to make sure you good. So just work through the process until you get to the point where you learn what you need to learn. Like, I
Mhm.
think about that all the time when there's adversity in my life, and sometimes I do get down on myself. And I'm a human, sometimes I do
Right.
feel like I'm not a perfect Christian. So, but when times come like that, I say, you know what, God, I'm gonna say thank you anyway, and I'm happy I'm alive and I'm
Yeah.
able to do this, because a lot of times when we go through hard times, it's for us to build character. And a
Yeah.
lot of times when people have trauma and things that happened to them when they were younger, and as hard as it may seem, it's because God has a purpose for your life, and,
Yeah.
and that it's not for you alone. Meaning that
Mhm.
the things that you've gone through, the abuse and different things that you have to encounter, it's not just about you.
Yeah.
It's that God allowed things to happen. He's going to bring you out because you're going to need to testify to other people that are going through it. You're going to need to be the light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. You're going to need to be the living example of how God can turn your life around.
Yeah.
And you are going to speak life to other people that are going through it, that went through it, all of that. So when I had controversial things happen in my life, and I'm like, you know what, God, it's uncomfortable, but thank you.
Mhm.
Because I know that you're building me up and you're making me stronger, because you got a lot of people that I need to talk to. And the
Right.
harder things go for me is the bigger you're going to elevate me, and the more people I can touch, and the more people that I can help come out of this. And so, you know what, God, thank you in advance, because you ain't just got me going through this for nothing.
Yeah.
You know what good
Yeah.
father would let their son have the worst of the worst? No, God has put us in a position that He's going to give us the best of the best, but He can't give you something if you don't go through something. Like
Mhm.
some of the greatest people to ever live had to go through something, because like people that say, I want to be a millionaire one day, whatever the case may be, then they wonder why God is taking them through a lot. It's because you need to be solid enough that when I give you this blessing, it's sustainable. I'm gonna give you a quick example. I had a kid out of wedlock when I was in college. It has been tumultuous,
Mhm.
probably majority of my son's life with me and his mom. It's just been tumultuous. However, I think a lot of that, and it was my fault. I was having sex out of wedlock, which is my fault. I can't blame anybody but myself. But what it did for me was, now that I'm married, which I've been married for like 5 years now.
Mhm.
Now that I'm married, 6 years. Now that I'm married,
Got to get that right.
now that I have another son,
Yeah.
how much more do I appreciate it now
Mm.
that I went through all that? I appreciate seeing my son every day, because I didn't get a chance to see my oldest son because we had to split time with me and his mama. I appreciate the hugs. I appreciate the marriage. I appreciate, and I'm so much more loyal to my marriage than I
Mhm.
probably would have if I'd never gone through nothing, because I know what it feels like to see your son on the weekends and the holidays and stuff. I never want that to happen again. I know what it feels like to deal with somebody who's a narcissist, who make you feel ashamed, and you're like, well, I didn't do nothing, but now I'm being accused of and all the arguing and the fighting. I appreciate what God has given me now, of a woman that's peaceful, that's reasonable, that's loving, that's
Mhm.
compassionate. I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as if I didn't go through something.
And you
And
wouldn't
I
have
think
taken
people got
care
it.
of it the same way. It would have been very
Yeah,
different.
I wouldn't, like, every day I wake up, I'm like, dang, God, like, even though when my youngest son was a baby, he was driving me crazy. I want to pull my hair out because he was crying there all night. And I'm like, oh, why did I start over and do this again? But at the end of the day, it's like, God is telling me, Brandon, I'm giving you an opportunity to experience what you didn't have the first time.
Yeah.
I'm giving you an
That's
opportunity to
cool.
experience love and a family, and doing it the right way this time. So
Mm.
all that crying and stuff and all that, you better thank me, because I'm giving you a good family, and I'm giving you everything you ask me for. And I know you. So you had to go, you are stubborn. So you had to go the roundabout way for me to get you to this point where you're going to be the solid man that I need you to be in a time such as
Mhm.
this, where you're not still young and confused about what you want to do, and
Yeah.
indecisive, and being a single guy with all the success and fame that you have. Like, no, I put you through all that to get you right here, because I need you to be prepared in a time like this, to be a solid rock for
Mhm.
what I want to do in the kingdom. And
Yeah.
I think that if people would understand their position in God, they would understand that all of that happened to you wasn't for nothing. All of that happened to you wasn't in vain. All of that happened to you was a part of your story and a part of your plan.
Hmm.
And it's a bigger purpose than to just be sitting back living 15 years ago. It's for you to now be an example for other people. And you're gonna change, as many people as you're willing, for God to allow you to change.
Yeah, and your story becomes more relatable to people who've been through what you've been through, and you're going to be the one to be able to speak to that versus I would not be able to. I mean, I raised my siblings, and I was a guardian of them at 24 years old and had five siblings with me. Like I can kind of speak to the parent side, but it's so much different when it's like that was my kid. That was their I'm their father and I missed this. And I don't think there is a lot of men out there who share about that. It's a lot of I always see women talking about that, but like the men out there, it's like we need strong men who are going to come and talk about the hard things with other men because that's how men are going to learn. Um, but I love this conversation. I want to honor your time. I know you are very very busy. So is there anything you want to add before we end? I think this was a great conversation. I'm really excited that we got to sit down and talk.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. The only thing I add is, put God first in your life in anything you do. And I know this sounds like it's easy to do. It's not very easy, but that the attempt needs to be there, and that involves you praying at night. I had set alarm clock, previously when I was really trying to get my life back on track, is that I would just pray 3 times a day. I have my alarm
Mhm.
clock go off and I say a quick prayer. It ain't got to be nothing super spooky and deep. It's just a quick thank you, Lord. I appreciate you for all the blessings. Amen. You know what I'm saying? Getting
Yeah.
yourself in that, getting yourself reading the Bible, and start living the lifestyle
Yeah.
that you want or to see in others. Like, be compassionate, be loving, be kind to the man that's on the street picking out the trash can. It doesn't mean that you can be mean to people because they're in a different walk of life. You be graceful to people, you love on people because that could have been you. And so
Mhm.
I think when people live that and they be the example, people's life change that way because it's not as much about what you say, it's what you do. You can
Yeah.
come around and Bible beat people all day, and then you mean to your staff members. People catch you cussing and acting a fool on the side. Those things turn people off more than what you say. So if
Yeah.
you are living a life, you're happy, you're friendly, you're approachable,
Yeah.
all of these things that you do, even if you have to cry at night, but you posture up to be the person God called you to be during the day for others,
Yeah.
then you need to be that, because what
Yeah.
that does is it gives people an idea of what success in Christ looks like, because some
Yeah.
people can't just read the Bible and just get it. They need to see it. They need to feel it. When you're at a restaurant and you claim you're a Christian and you treating the waiter make a mistake and you treat her like she should go to hell. It's like, no, 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 no. You say, no, it's all good. We make mistakes. You're
Yeah.
human. Everybody starts somewhere. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. And being that person is what makes the difference. So, but thank you so much for having me on. I really
Thank
appreciate the
you.
conversation.
And it's like the last thing I'll say is like I first and second Corinthians, that's one of the reasons that Paul writes to them to call them out is because he's like your guys' sin is actually hurting your witness. And so when you guys are acting like everybody around you, when you see a friend who's not a Christian treating a waitress this way, like that's not actually helping your friend learn who Jesus is. Like you need to show your friend and be the reflection of Jesus to your friend so that your witness is heard. And I love that because if we don't spend time in the Bible, we don't spend time in prayer, we're not going to change. We could be reading the Bible but not asking God for it to seep our soul, and our the veil is still going to be on our eyes. That was my parents, that they read the Bible, they went to church, they did all the things, but it never seeped into their soul. And I don't know why. Outside of, I mean, like that's just a thing between I guess them and Jesus, but it is that thing is like I don't want that for my life. I want it to seep into my soul. And so that this is just such a great reminder for me and others. So you guys, if you have questions, you guys are welcome to reach out to Brandon as well and just follow him and get challenged, even though if he has different beliefs than you do or I have different beliefs than you do. It's good to have those conversations and to be someone who's willing to challenge your belief system, to say like, am I actually right, and will this change? And then when it is abusive, you need to leave. But thank you so much, Brandon, for coming. I look forward to just continue learning from you, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Well, God bless you. Likewise.